Welcome to the eCommerce podcast with Matt Edmondson, a show that brings you regular interviews, tips, and tools for building your business online.
Hi, and welcome to the e-commerce podcast with me, your host, Matt Edmondson. All of this week's notes, links, and transcript can be found at ecommercepodcast.net/88. Now, technology is often blamed for all of society's problems. It's certainly one of the things that as e-commerce entrepreneurs we like to blame for our business. But what if the problem wasn't technology? What if the problem is us? Great question. That is the topic of today's conversation that I'm going to talk to Ian Finch about. So don't go anywhere.
Hey there, are you a business owner? Here at Aurion Digital, we know firsthand that running an e-commerce business can be really hard work. As the online space gets more competitive, it is becoming even more challenging to stay ahead of the curve. We totally get it. So we want to help you succeed by offering a wide range of services, from fulfillment, marketing, customer service, and even coaching and consulting, just so that you can do what matters most. Save yourself the time and the money and let us handle the day-to-day tasks. This way, you can run your business without having to worry about the boring stuff. So what do you say? Are we a good fit for each other? Come check us out at auriondigital.com and let us know what you think.
Thanks for joining us on the e-commerce podcast. It is great that you are here. Now, whether you are just starting out or if, like me, you've been around the world of e-commerce for a while, our goal on this show is simple. It's to help you grow your e-commerce and digital business. And to do that, we have what can only be described as a very simple formula. Part of that formula, bring great show sponsors that can help you. Another part of that formula is to bring fantastic guests who are experts in their fields with their own insights, with their own stories, with the principles that they've learned that we can use to adapt and grow and build our own online businesses. And today we get to talk to a chap who is actually a very good friend of mine, Mr. Ian Finch. Now, let me tell you about Ian. He is a CEO of Mando Group. He is a husband. He is a dad. He is also the chair of the British Interactive Media Association for the Northwest of England, which is a national network that drives digital transformation in large-scale organizations. Outside of work, he is, well, he's just an all-round top bloke. He's an advocate at the moment of mental health. He is, well, how can I put this? He's an exceptional guitarist. He actually played the guitar at the wedding of me and Sharon. We've been married a good old while, let me tell you. So that was over 20 years ago when a young lad called Ian Finch picked up an electric guitar and whistled some amazing tunes on it. So Ian is a lovely bloke. Known his family for years. You're going to listen to what Ian's got to say as we dig into this whole topic of technology not being the issue. Maybe the issue is with us. Maybe it's our mindset. And, listen in, because he's going to talk to maybe how we can take control of technology rather than letting technology take control of us. Interesting. So here we go. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Ian. So, Mr. Ian Finch, we finally get a chance to record this podcast. Great that you're here. And I have to start off by apologizing. It's taken us, 8 seasons to get you on the show. So
I realise it's not an opinion, or maybe it is, but it's good to be here. Good to see you.
Yeah, no, it's great that we're doing this, actually. He's an absolute legend. As I would have said, no doubt in the intro, Ian and I have known each other for a very, 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 very long time. I think you and I used to hang around with Noah, didn't we, back in the day? So
yeah. Yeah, it was.
It's been a while.
There was arcs and there was animals, and I think it's 25 years. I think, nonetheless. Which
it's been a long old time.
Yeah,
it's been a long old time. So yeah, what I should have done when we started the podcast is just gone around to everybody that I knew in the industry and said, "Listen, come be on the podcast." It would, in hindsight, it would have been a lot easier than the route that I did take when we launched the podcast. What was I thinking? So yeah, no, it's great that you're here. And obviously, I've been a follower of yours, and I've seen your journey in the tech space, the digital space. I've seen Mando's journey in that. I don't know some of the stories, and I know some of the clients that you've worked with, and I know you guys are very clever people. How did you get started in the whole tech digital thing? Was it by design or was it by accident?
It was by design in the sense of I was doing a computer studies degree in Liverpool. It was by accident in the sense that during the course of my degree, it was coming up to our sandwich year, and I was offered a job by IBM, and I turned it down based on a gut feeling that it wasn't right, which is quite difficult to explain to your teaching staff of university, but a kid in the 90s has turned down IBM on the basis of a gut feel when there's got 130 people to place. So I wasn't in the good books, if you like. I had a couple of friends. We were in a band, actually. There was five of us, and two of them, the manager and a drummer. Matt was buying modems for 20 quid, selling them installed for 60, and he was making 20 quid. And Jeff, who was drummer, was doing the install, and they were like, there's something. I mean, bear in mind, this is 1996 and 97. Getting on the internet was like this mind-blowing thing. And so they were getting people online with a one-page website and an email address. I thought there could be something in this, but they were about to go into their last year of uni, and couldn't perceive finishing their degree off and doing the business as well. And they said, well, look, you've messed your life up. why don't you run the office? Matt will run the business. Jeff will do the work, and we'll have a go. And I was like, all right, let's do that. And it felt exciting. And so we wrote a business plan on a weekend. My particular version of that business plan was Finch needs to last 48 weeks because that'll be my placement year. But it was good enough to get a small grant. We got £800 from a graduate trainee resource centre, between a loan from one of our mums and a couple of student loans. We were good to go. I think we had about £3,800, I think, to be precise. My uni let me do it as my placement year, which was actually quite far thinking of them, actually.
It was back then.
Yeah, and so we opened for trading and just started in this little office with a computer, a floppy disk, no network, floppy disks. We copied the files on and passed it, and the other one went into that computer. And we're doing sales calls by going through Yellow Pages, starting in AAA accounting on a website, and working our way through. But we couldn't get on the internet and make a phone call at the same time.
It's mad, isn't it?
And our entire first year portfolio for the first 9 months fitted on one floppy disk, which is about the same size storage-wise now as a badly optimized homepage, which is just crazy.
It's just crazy, isn't it? And I was having a conversation with my now 20-some-year-old son, who is doing theoretical physics at uni, because why would you not, right?
Do it properly, yeah.
And I was talking to him about this, how modems, when we were all excited back in the sort of late 90s when we got the, it went from a 36K modem to a 50. Do you remember the 56K? And we were so excited. But we're always like kind of, we're online, but get off quick because there's a phone bill coming.
Yeah, and, it was pre-Google when we set up. So, you're submitting your website you want registered in the search engine to Yahoo, and some guy emails you back direct because Yahoo were receiving them manually and deciding where they should place them. It's unbelievable to think where it started now. It's crazy.
Yeah, but it was exciting times, wasn't it? I mean, it's super exciting times. And this is in the late 90s, isn't it? And sort of fast forward 25 years, as they say.
And now here we are, Web3.
Web 3.0, and you don't even have to use dial-up anymore.
And a few other things, maybe, but that's the main thing.
Yeah, sure. Or floppy disks that go. What was the capacity of a floppy disk? Was it about a meg, 1 meg, or something like?
Precise. I think that was an exam question at uni. Goodness sake.
That's what you needed to know to get your computer science degree back in the day. So, I mean, here we are 25 years later. You're still, that company was called Webshed that you started. That little office on London Road. It was London Road, right?
Yeah, good memory.
Yeah. Fast forward 25 years, Webshed became Mando. I don't even know when. It was a while ago. You
2002, I think. Yep.
Yeah. So you renamed to Mando. Obviously, you're not in a little office on London Road anymore. You've got very plush, very expensive offices now. But you're still fundamentally doing digital, aren't you? You're still the business plan. I'm curious to know what that. I would love to read that business plan from then to what it is now.
Not that dissimilar.
Yeah, I was going to say I can't imagine that it would. It's just like, we'll sell websites. That's what we'll do.
Do you know what? It's funny you should say that, because in that business plan there was a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this morning, I was interviewed by our ISO auditors, where I referenced our SWOT analysis. It's just like, this is crazy, but business is business, and doing business online, the extent of what you can do online and the breadth of it, but it's still a channel shift even now, and you're still trying to make it ever more easy to use, user friendly, satisfying as an experience, giving people time back. And so those fundamentals of what you're trying to give users back and what that achieves for the organizations that you're working for hasn't changed that much.
No, in fact, I have this conversation on a fairly regular basis. There are some things which changed almost daily, it seems, and there are some of the things that you do, some of the tactics which change, but the principles which drive those things are almost timeless.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Like, good customer experience. Well, Woolworths figured this out. Selfridges, if you watch the TV show Selfridges, he figured 100%. That out years ago when he started the Selfridges store, right? It's all about the customer experience. And so, the principles are timeless, but it's just how we outwork them in the modern world. And now the title of this podcast, which we came up with when we were chatting about it, is technology isn't the issue, you are.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it is.
And how did you come up with that? Or why was that? Why is that a thing to you? And does it tie into some of these timeless principles is what I'm wondering. So let's just dive straight into that. What do you mean technology isn't the issue, you are?
So we've discussed already that in the 90s, you had to turn your phone off to connect to the internet, or you had to send your new website to Yahoo to be judged by them and then put in. So, there was a fair few obstacles to come over. You shoot forward to the present day, and I would say probably the last 5 years, maybe not much more than that, but we're at a point where technology has evolved so fast, whether it's processing power and chips or cloud computing, the rise of social or blockchain, or all the things that have happened, where we as people aren't waiting for, in most cases, majority of cases, not all, we're not waiting now for technology. If only I could do this, if someone would just invent, the wheel or the latest created supercomputer. We're at a point in history I think is unprecedented, where technology has evolved so fast that computers can code the human genome, that we can map the whole of the earth and zoom in. Technology is not the issue. When back in the day, people would go, "Can you make my search like Google?" Like, well, if you give me £1 billion and several years, I'll try. But whereas now you can just collect to an artificial intelligence connects a Microsoft Azure service that gives you intelligent search on your website. You can connect to services, and so you can pretty much, within reason, do anything you want from a digital experience perspective, and at a fraction of the price that you used to do it. Or in fact, people just wouldn't spend that money, but just do without. Whereas now it's actually intangible reach. And so it's a question of budgets within the year, or is it a program, and a question of value that you can derive. But now the technology is just so advanced and you can do so much. If you literally just switched it all on, I want one of those, and I just want to redo my entire supply chain. I want to digitize my business. And automate everything, you could, with the right people in the right time, do it. But it would be so overwhelming to your organization that we almost have to meter and pace what we do relative to the resources available, obviously, but maybe not so obviously, the level of change by which a human can actually cope with at any point in time. And so some organizations are better than others, obviously it is. But if Facebook are doing several releases per day, Microsoft Azure, I think the last count I had, which is a couple of years old now, is like 450 releases a year for that platform. I mean, that's a size and scale that would blow the majority of companies' minds, certainly ones that are not tech businesses to start off with. And so if that's a pace of change that continually optimizes the customer experience, then we know that as a direction of travel, most organizations are never going to get there, but that's the road we walk, and we walk at a pace that suits our organization. And so that's what I mean by that you can have whatever you want, but do you really want what you think you want? Because are you ready for it? You can't even handle this. I forget what film that's on. You have to tell me. But
you can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth.
And I think you have an enlightened organization that knows what pace they can adopt change at, and you can talk about a partnership, but you can set a velocity and you can work in an agile manner. And prioritize and walk that journey together.
That's a really interesting. So do you think then that actually I remember that, I don't know if you remember this, my very first website you guys wrote, Webshed, wrote it. And I'm just thinking sort of through the year, when I had my website, it was like, no, this is what you can have. It'll do this. And okay.
Sorry.
Whereas now, like you say, there's...
we made that one now.
Yeah. It worked well. And the spinning logo and everything. Do you think there's almost now too much choice? So if I was, for example, starting again today, compared to where it was, in the late 90s, where you had very limited choice, now the choice almost seems overwhelming, doesn't it? Do you think I guess it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're enterprise clients or whether you're just starting out on the road, there's too much choice, right?
I say this to the guys at work, particularly in sometimes in sales environments or new starters meetings. Like, we've got very highly trained professionals that have learned the full breadth and they're willing to deliver on requirements. And I often say a lot of people, in fact, the majority of people, they want a ham sandwich and they want to go to the shelf and pull off a ham sandwich. And actually, if you go, well, what type of bread do you want? And do you want butter or olive oil? Do you want black pepper or normal pepper? What kind of cheese do you want? And then you end up with 20 minutes where the clients go, I want this type of lettuce and I want this type of dressing. And it's exhausting. Now, I love a good Phil Potts bespoke sandwich. I do, but it's like maybe every
other brands are available.
Go to a delicatessen and order a bespoke sandwich. Most of the time, I just want a ham and cheese, and I think most clients want you to have done the thinking for them. And so that's why I think certainly what we do, sectorial knowledge, a certain range of technologies and a particular offering is quite important. And you see definite trends where the jack of all trades agency just isn't around as much, or the only way you get that is the 125,000 staff global scale. So I think that works on the agency side and the client side. There is this anxiety. Well, what if I commit to the wrong technology? You know, I want to go to Magento. I should have done Shopify, not Spotify, or whatever the technology might be. And I think the industry is trying to address that, and so there is a move. The acronym is MAC. So microservices, APIs, composable, and headless is what the techie terms are. But basically, if I was to try and summarize it here, it's a much more atomized approach to development. So you can put together a discrete piece of functionality to serve a purpose, knowing that it will interop and be compatible with another discrete piece of functionality. Whereas for a long time, there's been this thing called a monolith where I have to buy an entire system. And I'll take the rough and smooth. You know, SAP would be the classic. You know, I've just bought it for several million. Yeah. Now I need to spend several million on it. It's going to take me 5 years, and I hope it works. You know, sorry, SAP, that's probably old school example, but don't see me. It's just an observation. And so I think the industry is realizing that. But even then, when you actually look even at that MAC acronym and all the technologies that could be comprised of that, there's still an anxiety that kicks in. Front-end technologies alone. We use a language primarily called Vue.js. Loads of the industry use React. And we have reasons we do that. People use React for a reason. But you get almost kind of like this clan, tribal devotion to things. And, do we really want to learn that new technology because it just be for that client? Well, we've got a whole system as a 3-year plan. I'm sure we could do it. And we have these kind of debates internally with clients. Then, well, what if you want to bring it in-house? What's going to be easier to hire? And so it just goes on and on and on in every direction. And so a lot of what we end up doing, and much like yourself, is going, here's through consultancy, you go, here's some shortcuts we know work. And here's an area where there is genuinely an important stake in the ground where we do need to sit down and really discuss this and do the legwork and do the research to work out what's next. But that shouldn't have to be every day if you're working with the right people.
Yeah. That's really interesting. We are going to get into this a whole lot more. So don't go anywhere as we just take a few seconds to hear from this week's show sponsors.
Did you know that nutrition is one of the keys to maintaining the energy you need to drive your business forward? Vegetology creates incredible, unique supplements in an eco-friendly, ethical, and sustainable way that feed your body with the precise nutrients it needs. We're not just making you healthier, we're helping to protect our planet too. Our products are vegan friendly and approved by the Vegan and Vegetarian Society. Plus, they're gluten-free so they fit perfectly into any lifestyle. They also contain no artificial colours or flavours, making them good for your taste buds too. You can feel good about your food choices with our healthy, natural supplements. We have something for everyone, whether you want to boost your immune system or just get more energy every day. And we're always working on new ingredients so that we can provide even better products in the future. So what are you waiting for? Get started now by heading over to vegetology.com.
Hey there, are you a business owner? Here at Aurion Digital, we know firsthand that running an e-commerce business can be really hard work. As the online space gets more competitive, it is becoming even more challenging to stay ahead of the curve. We totally get it. So we want to help you succeed by offering a wide range of services, from fulfillment, marketing, customer service, and even coaching and consulting, just so that you can do what matters most. Save yourself the time and the money and let us handle the day-to-day tasks. This way, you can run your business without having to worry about the boring stuff. So what do you say? Are we a good fit for each other? Come check us out at auriondigital.com and let us know what you think.
I'm back with the legend, which is Finch, Mr. Ian Finch. Before we were talking, Ian, about how there's too much choice in a lot of respects for the consumer, and this is true. Even, I mean, you went into the whole Mac thing, which was just fascinating. And even if you're just starting out, actually, there's a lot of choice. Which platform do you start with, right? And I need to get the right one. Which template do I use, and all that sort of stuff, and so on and so forth. What ways have you found work to help narrow that choice? How do you make the right decision? I mean, you do a lot of consulting with clients, in effect, a lot of enterprise clients. What are sort of some of the things that you need to think about?
So I think the first thing I always suggest is do not see this as a one-off, whatever it is. If you're automating something, if you're investing digital, if you're doing a channel shift online, if you're selling products online, whatever you use today, it will need to evolve, and that has to be okay. So plan for the ongoing work as much as the project itself. I think secondly, particularly in the techie arena, there's this real fear of ripping it up and starting again, and it's understandable, but sometimes it's okay. So, like for example, a couple of months ago, someone was talking about, I've got this idea. I want to sell cushions, I think it was, whatever it was. And I was like, well, there's Etsy. Why don't you start there? And no, I want my own website. I'm like, why? You don't know it's going to work yet. Yeah. In fact, just set up an Instagram page. And, I know plenty of people that are making a fortune out selling trainers just on Instagram pages. Start where you're at. Start with your product and your customer service and your words. But people get a little bit obsessed about brands and the website and forget it's still communication. It's still service. It's still a product. And so now, obviously, that's at a really micro end of things. And on the enterprise level, then it's, most large organizations know this. There isn't a light switch where you can just turn off the old systems and put the new systems on. And so priorities will be driven by maybe legacy systems that are running out of support, for example, or where there's a huge license fee about to kick in. And we want to get rid of that one and put something else in new before we have to pay for another 3 years or whatever. So there's burning platforms. Then there's the aspects of, certainly in regulated industries, then what the regulator's saying. So within the water sector, in terms of your customer experience, the brand empathy and the brand awareness and the brand ended up having a scorecard of what your brand stands for, one particular cycle. And so there's a load of head scratching about that. Okay, right, well, what does that mean for social? And actually, if someone contacts us on a social channel, that probably ends up needing to be in our service level agreement of how quickly we respond to the customer. Or do we even want to do social? How do we handle that? And so you've then got the external factors like regulations and so on. So we need to kind of categorize these kind of big areas. And I'm sure you recognize to your customers as well that, what are the big rocks? What are pebbles? What are the sand? And let's get the big stuff there and then start chunking it down into more manageable chunks, and that which we don't need to worry about now will move back. And so in simple terms, I always kind of draw up a matrix really and be like, what needs to, are you looking at me this way? Is this left for you? Is that right for you? Or is it the other way around? Anyway, doesn't matter.
I've no idea which way it turns out.
Future. And then like a parking lot. And then down this axis, like what is it we want to achieve by way of a goal? What are the things that need to happen to achieve that goal? What are the dependencies for those things to happen? Time, resource, budget, other tech. and what's our training comms and bringing everyone along with us going to be. And so, and the things you want to do end up being, well, we can do this goal now if we have these dependencies in place and we communicate this way, but oh, actually there's a showstopper here, so we can't possibly achieve that goal until more time in the future. And so very quickly you can get a rough swim lane diagram of priorities, and then get everyone coalesced around that. And by everyone, I typically mean marketing, IT, as the two people that most need to play well with each other. and then, get the C-suite on board and the sponsors, and get the governance in place. Because if there's someone that's not on board who has a senior role of an organization, I would say either an actual senior role or the hidden power org chart that no one publishes but happens, the political org chart. We need to get the key people in place and understand. And once marketing understand that they can't have widget X because IT need to put a CRM system in place first, then they unclench a little bit. No one's saying no, not for a reason because they hate marketing and they're resistant. So I've got this to do. Is that okay? And I'm stereotyping for the sake of articulating the point, but the getting everyone around that high level plan, and then you can t-shirt size it then in terms of the people involved and the money involved, and then that gives you another dimension of going, well, in light of that, what can we do now that gets us to the future, and what does that journey look like, and you start planning it out.
That's great. I like that phrase you used, they unclench a little. And the thing is, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been in those meetings. I've had those conversations.
Out and the shoulders drop down, and
It's just really funny, isn't it? Really funny. One of the things that you mentioned earlier that I just want to sort of circle back to, if I can, because I realize actually it's a term you use. It's this term called Agile. Now, I appreciate that a lot of people know what Agile is, but I also appreciate a lot of people don't. And it's one of these words which is thrown around the web industry. And
if I start weeping while we talk about this, is that okay? It's a safe space, right?
Okay, cry away. This is therapy. Yeah. This is a safe space. So for those that may not understand what Agile is it possible to give us a quick overview?
Well, bear in mind that whatever I say will end up with 90% of dissent in your audience immediately. There's there's a website called the agilemanifesto.org. And at its heart, it's about delivering working software with every release. And so in my way of looking at the world, it's in old... Well, still, actually, it's not even old. It's just horses for courses. But in what we call a waterfall model, which some people that have been around long might call Prince or Prince 2, you spec it to hell. So it's with an inch of its life is spec'd in there. And then you build the thing for however long it takes. And then you test it, and then you launch it. And in larger scale projects, 3 or 4 years might have elapsed. And by the time the thing's gone live, technology is obsolete. There wasn't even a business need anymore. And please see any one of a number of government projects through the early noughties and so on for horror stories around that. Whereas the idea of Agile is that you prioritize the most important things right now, and in whatever length of time you determine, you go 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month from now, we will deliver working software. And that working software is against a prioritized list of things that need to happen. And then a team swarm around it with total concentration, regularly checking in with each other. And it flips everything on its head. So call it every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, some stuff that works go live that everyone's happy with. And then 2 weeks after that, and the important bit is the 2 week cycle not so much what you release. Whereas in the old way, it was all about that. I haven't got that extra bullet point on page 492 of a spec, and that's a problem. And it gets things to market quicker. You can test, you can release, you can iterate, and the whole, hence Agile by name, Agile by nature. And so it's more about ceremonies and communication, and people coming together and going, right, we're going to tackle this, rather than paperwork and specs. And there's a massive place for paperwork, don't get me wrong, but the emphasis has shifted to getting stuff done rather than the paper trail. For us, we actually prefer the word agility, because Agile is so associated with a particular methodology, which even then has, is it Kanban? Yeah, or is it some other derivative of Agile, the Scrum, for example? Whereas agility, it kind of is a little bit of a broader brush. And so we've done plenty of organizations or work where you get a tender or a request for proposal, and you put a bid together. It's like, we want to be Agile. You're like, and then you realize it is entirely an aspiration of the product owner who's done an Agile course. Like, this is brilliant, I want to do this. And there's 400 other people in the organization like, no. Not even.
They're clenching. They're clenching.
The shoulders are up. Great butt workout, not so great for letting a meeting happen and throw freely. So everyone's clenched, and they're all a bit stressed, but they're interested about Agile. That looks into, that sounds great. You're not drowning in the paper. I could just get stuff done. That's amazing. And then it starts to change your negotiations. Well, we kind of want, Wagile. I've read this blog, and it combines waterfall with Agile. And so we want Wagile. We're like, okay. Or Agifall is another one. And eventually you just go, let's call it Fragile, because it is, because there's nothing that's going to work here, and then we ended up compromising ourselves and doing, let's do phased waterfall or whatever it might be. And what happens is, because there's a high degree of trust required for Agile, because in waterfall, I have spec'd a car, and I expect a car with 4 wheels and a windscreen and a wind wiper, and I want a car at the end of it, because that's what I expect and that's what the budget's for. In Agile, you want to get from A to B faster than you can on your feet, and you think that some kind of mechanism with 4 wheels and a gearbox would do that, but you don't know. You're just going to start, and it could be you end up with a tricycle or a skateboard or a plane, and that's okay, because what you wanted to do, you're getting from A to B faster. But you put that in front of a legal team or a procurement department, like, these contracts have been around for 30, 40 years and very little updates. And that's just one example of how you need to get a whole organization coming around the same principle.
And is that why, when I mentioned Agile, you said you might start crying? Is that why you might start crying? It's not there's a problem with Agile per se. It's just actually the biggest problem is the end user, the customer, is the guy financing the whole thing.
It's you. It's not Agile. It's you. And obviously we did that as a bit of clickbait for the podcast, didn't we? But no one individual is ever a problem. Someone that can see the future, can have a career path put in front of them and a training course, and still just refuses and sticks their heels in, probably is them. But for the most part, it's people with day jobs or other thing, going on. And even now, digital can still be the second job for a lot of people, as rather than a dedicated role, or certainly working with partners. And so there's a lot to put around I'm reading a book at the minute called Agile Conversations, that starts with, you've read enough about Agile, you don't need to talk about that, but here's what a real conversation where you get truth out and everyone look at it in a 360 view and don't hide stuff can change life. You're like, I can think of loads of organizations that there's a benefit. It's not just a Scrum team, but churches, organizations, government, teaching, marriages. Everyone should read this book. It's like how to have a truthful conversation in a short amount of time, but the point is, you need a high degree of trust with your team to achieve that. Without wanting to get into Simon Sinek world, but there's loads more that goes on to make Agile successful than simply getting a Kanban board up on a wall and then having a go.
Yeah. Thank you for that. It's like I say, for me, Agile is one of those things. It's thrown around: Scrum, Kanban, Waterfall, and you're like, what? No, it's like people just invent words just because they can.
Work through it together. There you go. There's Agile.
Yeah, pretty much it. Podcast over right there.
Which actually, to your point earlier about business plans, my first business plan is like 40 pages, and now it's a list with it. Is it done or not on our intranet?
Yeah. Yes.
And you just it's just like get rid of all the stuff you're doing to put a piece of homework in front of your boss or your school to pass an exam, and just get on with what. And most of life comes down to lists and ticking things off.
Yeah, it does, and prioritizing it, doesn't it? And thinking outside the box, not being rigid about things, and just going, actually, if I do it this way, maybe actually this is a better way. Which I'm coming back down to that whole agility thing, and I'm going back to the title. I mean, you mentioned it. The technology isn't the issue, you are. So we've talked about how there's a lot of choice, but technology is there. Pretty much technology can do what we need. So we now need to figure out how we respond to that accordingly. And we've talked a little bit about your nice matrix, and we've talked about maybe Agile's a way to go if you're in some respects, and just start and see where it goes. I was always the guy which said it's easier to turn a car when 100%. It's moving, and it's just that for me is Agile, right? Just get the car moving and turn it as you go. Yep. And I think, what else can we do if we're the issue? Technology isn't. What else can we do to help ourselves, do you think?
So I think having an attitude or of a growth mindset of learning. I can't bear the idea for myself, and I think it's really sad when I see it enacted in the workplace or with other people where, whatever. I'm 35. I've learned all I'm ever going to know about everything, and that's it for me now. I've plateaued. This is it, done deal. And of course, no one's going to admit to that. But you see heels digging in everywhere, and we've always done it like this, and why change? And humans typically fear change. So when you meet someone who just sees change as part of the creative process, and it's just like, let's keep going, this is amazing, they stand out, and you want to be around them, and it's exciting, but also a bit dangerous. And so I think there's a getting used to being comfortable with change, and then it's a commitment to making other people feel safe as well. So I always say this to whenever we're pitching for new business, that the client has a brief, and therefore they have an aspiration of what they want in the future. And so, here's how you achieve that if it's the right thing. So actually maybe challenge it as well. But two, as well as how you're going to get there and how much it's going to cost and the rest of it. But it's going to be a pleasant experience as well. It's going to be fine while doing this, but you're not going to get sacked. You're not going to have to work loads more hours. It's not going to go wrong. Here's why it's not going to go wrong. And so much of those early investment in a relationship is to make sure things aren't going to go wrong, and we make people feel safe first. So internally, we run what's called a pre-mortem. So here's how everything's going to go wrong. Let's do a pre-mortem and just plan those risks. In any delivery, you want more risks than issues, because a risk you can predict, identify, and mitigate. An issue's already happening. So I think we as humans can. And I've done some training on this at Mando, actually, is what if, it sounds really dry, doesn't it? But it's life-giving, I promise. But what if you had a risks and issues document for your life? What if you lived your life like a raid log, where you just go, well, that might hurt in 6 months, so let's do that now. And that can be attitudinal. It can be in terms of your own experiences. And so be aware of what's coming and embrace it and get excited about learning something new rather than feeling threatened. But then knowing that people are going to feel threatened, work really hard to make everyone else feel safe too. And so if you've got a growth mindset and you're making it safe for other people to experiment and fail in their growth mindset, then you can go on a journey as a team. And it has to be okay to fail. I don't think it's okay to fail 3 times. 2's borderline for me. But failing once is fine. Twice, it's like, have we got this now? 3rd time, are you even looking?
So you're talking about failing at the same thing.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and that's an really important point to make. I think you can carry on failing in 360 degrees, providing it's something new every time. That's how you learn. But doing exactly the same thing, either by literally doing or just having an attitude or whatever it might be and expecting life to be different, that is insanity. It is.
Was it Einstein that said that? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. I'm pretty sure it wasn't me. I'm pretty sure it wasn't you. But no, it's true, isn't it? And I like that, have that sort of growth mindset and change mindset because, and again, you touched on this earlier on, that the industry that we're in, and if you're in the e-commerce business, you're in the digital business, right? Digital changes in leaps and bounds. For me, ever since the early noughties when we started out in e-commerce, we just had this policy which says every 2 years I'm going to have to redo my website.
Grieve every it now years. If you need to, but accept it and put it in the plan, and then you can move on.
Yeah. And then you can cope with it. Exactly. You can breathe again, and it's just like, okay, this is going to last 2 years. Awesome. So I now need to, in 12 months' time, I now need to start thinking about the next project. And you are perpetually redoing your website as you go through as an e-commerce entrepreneur. So you've got to get used to that factor. And every time you redo it, there are new things you need to learn. There are new avenues. And you need to understand your customer experience more and more as you go down that journey to deliver a better and better customer experience with the technology that's now available. And I think it's a really interesting mindset to have alongside the mindset which says it's okay to fail. Have you read the book Black Box Thinking?
No.
It's a really interesting book by, I think, the guy that wrote it, Matthew Syed. I think I may have done him a misjustice. He wrote a book called Black Box Thinking, it contrasts the healthcare industry in the States and the airline industry and how they both approach failure in very different ways. So in the healthcare industry, you cannot fail. And if you do fail, you cover it up. Why? Because there's litigation involved, right? In the airline industry. In the airline industry, they approach failure in a very different way, which says, right, what can we learn from this so we don't make the same mistake again?
It's a growth mindset.
Yeah. It's a growth mindset. And so now the airline industry, airline aviation, one of the safest ways to travel in the world. Yep. Right, because of the way that so in his book he contrasts I've in effect spoiled, but I haven't. It's a really interesting book full of great insights.
That's the Matt Blinkist version. Love it.
Yeah, just subscribe. Do a book every week. But I thought it was a fascinating insight into this whole concept of just being okay to fail and being okay with failure, but learning from that failure and not just repeating the same mistake over and over again.
And I think I still feel really awkward calling myself an entrepreneur. Isn't that weird? 25 years in, it's still like...
Yeah, you need to get over that.
But checks. It's strange. But anyway, as entrepreneurs, you just fail all the time. I packed cages and cut chips in a chippy. Then I set up an internet business and learned how to make a website on my first website. 25 years later, I've got quite a lot of competence and skill I've developed over the years, but it's all new. So over Christmas, I was going, right, I really do have to get my head around blockchain and NFTs right now, because this is weirding me out.
It's weirded a lot of people out.
And so that need to learn. But it's a given. And what I forget is that when you lead an organization and what you do doesn't work, and sometimes people lose their jobs because you hit a downturn, or you go, public sector is a really good idea, Tories get in. Oh, or
didn't see that one coming.
Those moments, you fail on a really grand scale, and there's no getting around it, and over time you get used to it, and so when I say to people, it's okay, you fail, it's all right, just we'll learn, and we'll dust ourselves down and we'll move on. They don't hear me living 25 years of continual failure and just calling it iteration. Yeah. They go, okay, don't know what that means, don't know how I feel about it. Are you actually saying it's okay to fail? Because you are the boss, and I've only known you, a day, a year, whatever, 10 years. And there's a whole load of angst that I can't possibly know, because they've been in an organization. They might have been in your pharmaceutical example. I mean, like, hell no, I'm not admitting anything, and someone else, or a legal firm would be a classic, or someone else has come from the airline industry and go, yeah, okay, we can do that, it's fine. It's only people dying in plane crashes after all, and they're used to it because the failures are massive, and they have to get it on the open. And that cultural backdrop of what someone comes into, you have no idea what they've lived. And so you have to spell that out. And so we did some training around being comfortable with failure. And the response was overwhelming of just what it meant for people for us to commit to training how to deal with failure, for us to call out examples of these cataclysmic things that we've done, or it's okay to experiment, as well as successes. And I think it's so important to just continually reassure people and just make it okay. And that kind of, be accountable. And so we don't fail at the same thing, too many times. Like I said, I'm in two minds about two, but three I've got a problem with. One's totally fine. But that, you can't underestimate the importance of reiterating that to everyone. And I think as entrepreneurs or business owners or e-commerce people, you will get a product that doesn't work, a product line is, and you will spend money on it, you will lose money. And sometimes your dispatch won't work, or someone will let you down, or whatever it is. But I think for me, amongst many, many great successes that Amazon have had, my experience of Amazon was, we'll sort that, don't you worry about it. And it came the next day, or whatever it might be. And that, that ownership, people are okay with mistakes if you own them, but they're not okay if you don't own it. One of my favorite quotes I ever had from him, possibly my favorite customer ever, actually, on day one of a new contract, he just went, Ian, I've got some really simple rules, really. And the main one is this. I love bad news early. I can't say I love bad news, but I love bad news early. If there's going to be bad news, give it to me early. I can't bear to the point of in fact, not even sense of humor, to the point of violence for bad news late. Oh, are we clear? No, I went, abundantly. To the point of violence, I can't bear bad news late. But
I might use that line. That sounds really.
He was absolutely consistent with that. When I went, look, we spotted a risk, or worse, we spotted an issue. Here's what we're going to do about it. If it's a few weeks out, fine. If it came out that we knew this earlier and didn't tell him, even if we were trying to solve it, that was bad. You did it once, and that was a lesson.
You never did it again.
That level of consistency, that level of enlightenment I mean, there's a guy that leans in, might have been in the airline industry. Just tell me what the problem is and we'll deal with it. That kind of person changes the world.
Yeah. No, that's really fascinating. That's really fascinating. Listen, I feel like we could carry on talking about this all day long. But I've got to be mindful of time. How do people reach you? How do people connect with you if they want to do that? What's the best way to reach
LinkedIn's
Ian
really
Finch?
best. I'm fairly searchable. It's not loads of Ian Finches around, particularly if you use my middle name, Ian David Finch. I think you'll find that on LinkedIn, or via our Mando Agency website. They're probably the best mechanisms. And more than happy to continue a conversation. We've done a very broad brush of a lot of big principles today, haven't we? If anyone wanted to kind of go into any more detail about specific technologies or running projects, and by all means get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will, of course, link to Ian's LinkedIn profile and to Mando Agency in the show notes as well. So if you regular and you do get those via email, the links will be in there. But Ian, it's been an absolute treat. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll have to get you on again in a much sooner time frame and carry on these kind of conversations. But brilliant. Thanks, bud. Well, a huge shout out and thanks to my good friend and special guest, Ian Finch. What did you think? Hope you found that helpful. Hope you managed to take lots of notes. But of course, if you didn't and you would like access to notes and you want to go over them again, thinking about some of the stuff that Ian's mentioned, just head on over to the website where you can get all of the notes, the transcripts, and all of the links to Ian and connect with him at ecommercepodcast.net/88. He'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and do that. Now, if that's not enough e-commerce, digital goodness, if that's not enough conversation about technology, you'll be pleased to know next week we have another fab episode. Next week, let me tell you what's coming up. I'm going to chat with a man from the other side of the world, the man from down under, Mr. Stuart Leo. He is going to talk about how to grow your e-commerce business by stealing these 7 secrets from the military. I'm loving all our new cryptic titles, but stealing 7 secrets from the military. It's a great interview. And to wet your whistle, as I like to say, here is an excerpt from next week's show.
And if you're solving a real problem, if you're, friend of mine, an older gentleman, a mentor of mine, he runs a little tool shop, rare tools for woodworkers.
Give me his name and number.
Okay, see what just happened there. Why were you excited? Because you're like, oh man, it's so hard to get those things. And so he's niched. He's found a problem with a distinct audience. And if you're into woodworking and lathes and making stuff, clearly I'm not.
You're way out of your comfort zone.
I am, right. You can educate me in a minute. That problem resonates because you can't just go down to Walmart or Sainsbury's or Tesco's and buy that tool or Bunnings here in Australia. You've got to find that. Is this making sense? He's found a problem and he's solved it by going out and talking to 10 or 20 wholesalers around the world, finding those products and bringing them to one place so people who love woodworking can go there and get it.
I'm looking forward to this, let me tell you, and you should be too. It was a great interview. I really loved my conversation with Stuart. So if you've enjoyed this podcast, I would appreciate it if you could rate the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. And of course, share it out. Share it with people that you know. Share it out on LinkedIn or wherever you are. It just enables us to connect with more folks from around the world. And that is another simple formula. The bigger the show gets, the easier it is to get great sponsors. The more great sponsors we can get, the easier it is for us to bring this free content for you. So it's a win-win scenario, as I like to say. As I said at the start, all of the notes, links, and transcript from my conversation with Ian are online, and you can get them for free at ecommercepodcast.net/88. And whilst you're there, sign up to our newsletter, and we'll email you all of these notes in future automagically. And talking of automagically, if you're subscribed, you will get next week's show with Stuart it just appears. It just appears. It's a beautiful thing in your podcast program. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for listening. And I'll be back again next week. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the eCommerce podcast with Matt Edmondson. Join us next time for more interviews, tips, and tools for building your business online.